And
being quiet.
We are live, everyone, and welcome back to the Trainman Report. We are here with Joel Ceausu. I don't know if I said it right.
Ceausu.
Okay, hold on. Ceausu. Correct, Mundo.
Ceausu.
We didn't check ahead of time. I freestyled it.
I apologize.
Big mistake.
Sorry.
But yeah, we're here with another episode of the Trainman Report. This is your local NDG weekly news podcast featuring myself, Holden Stephan Roy, and Alex Montagano, the Trainman. That's why it's the Trainman Report. He's the one that reads all the budget stuffs and is super passionate, and I'm over here just, trying to catch up and get my knowledge on and get more involved in the community as we build up a platform here. But, it only works if we all work together. So if you're watching this, please share the content with your friends. If you want to be on the show, reach out, because we do want to use this as a platform to let people know what's happening in the community, local businesses, your passion projects. If you're looking for any purpose, really, come use the platform to come speak about your cause. And if you're watching this live on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to hit like, leave some comments. This is an interactive show. We will interact with you. And on that note, I think we're also on all of the podcast networks. So appreciate everyone who wants to go out and follow us there. So if you do want to listen to past episodes on Spotify, you can go there. And then we would appreciate the positive ratings and the follows and everything else. So it's only with you can we really grow this. And we're already looking into Patreon ideas. So if you want to help us out, tell us what Trainman Report merch items you think would be really cool to invest in so that we can get the ball rolling, because we're going to go all the way with this. On that note, Alex, you like to come in with your introductions. We have our guest Joel back with us. Our first repeat guest over here on episode 15.
Imagine that. Our first repeat guest, episode 15. That's awesome, man. I just got to thank Joel so much for joining us again. Joel, for those who don't know, is our only, I repeat, local beat reporter for CDNEG. He covers CDNEG, attends all the council meetings, all of them, and listens to the whole thing from beginning to end, which is an exercise in itself. So thank you so much, Joel. And he's a reporter for the Suburban. And I encourage all of our followers to also follow and read the Suburban, especially read and follow Joel's articles. And I'm avoiding saying your last name, Joel, because I thought it's killing me. I apologize.
Your name ends in a vowel. You should at least try.
I'm really sorry. I'm terrible with names. I just own that. Okay, I apologize. So just really an honor and a privilege again to have Joel on, because he is just a wealth of knowledge, and he's going to give us an update. And just for community updates, Wheel Club, right? We got the weekend shows coming up. So Friday is country music dance party with Deep Rose Junction. So train stuff there. Hear that? Junction, right? It's a train analogy.
Can I shout out to the Wheel Club?
Please.
Congratulate them, a big hearty mazel tov, because they bought new chalk for the pool table and they're keeping it behind the bar.
And it's a free table, ladies and gentlemen, right? So if you're looking for something to do and you want to shoot some pool, you can play Joel and probably win.
You got to catch me first.
And that's a slight. I don't know how good of a player Joel is at pool. And then the Saturdays is Sweet Emotion, classic rock party band. So Sweet Sound Emotion. I'm guessing that's Sweet Emotion. I said it wrong. It's actually Sound Emotion. And then I'm pushing the Maison de Backgammon. Why? Because I like to play backgammon, and I want to see them, enjoy success. And they are featuring on Saturday, March 2nd, 2024, a chess tournament for under 16. Okay, so this is for young people to play chess. Chess is a very popular game for the mindset out there. And when I say mindset, I really mean mind. It's a game it's a battle of intellect, of course. So
it's encouraging to know that there's young people who have the kind of attention span required for that.
Yeah, it is.
I'm pleased to hear that.
Yes. So March 2nd, you can go to the Maison de Backgammon. There's a Facebook page there that's available for them and a webpage, and you can sign up. So please do that. So we've already done the introduction of Joel something. Help us out, Joel, please, again.
You're gonna try? You're gonna try?
I'm gonna get it wrong. I know. I need to hear it again.
Anyway.
Ceausu.
Okay, there we go. That's a tough one. I'm sorry. So let's start with Joel, and let's do the community update. Borough Council. What's been happening locally, politically? We've got a lot going on. We have the Terrebonne bike path that's kind of been approved. There's been some questions about that. I was at City Council last night. City Council downtown.
Center City. Yes.
And the other thing is that we have the Legare intersection. That was an interesting thing that came up in council.
In front of the Jewish General Hospital, yeah. There's some
pushed by Stephanie Venezuela, if I pronounced that name correctly.
Valenzuela.
Thank you so much. I really need help here.
No.
I don't give anybody a hard time for mispronouncing my name precisely for this reason.
Correct.
And then there's also
he did give me an eye. He gave me like a stern eye when I said his name wrong. So he didn't give me heck, but it was a little irk.
It was there.
All about the stern eye.
Then we have the whole issue of systemic racism and the appointment, believe it or not, of our borough mayor Gracia to the executive committee. She's handling that file.
Your borough mayor is making a lot of news.
Right. So Joel, I talk too much. Shoot. Give us the lowdown.
Well, start off with
you brought up Terrebonne. So it was approved at the Borough Council last week, and then it was approved yesterday at City Center, which means it's going ahead. But what was interesting yesterday at City Council downtown was some folks from NDG went downtown to voice their dissatisfaction with the bike path and the process. And in the course of doing so, the borough mayor of Côte-de-Neige, Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, Gracia Katahwa, she was asked by a citizen if she's prepared to lose her seat, if she's worried that she may lose her job over this issue. And she stood up and said, yeah, she's worried and she's prepared. And she thinks she did the right thing. And she believes in the cause and believes in what she's done. And she says she's consulted the citizens, she's consulted the institutions, and she let it be known that there is still time to improve the plan, but that it's going ahead. But she was very frank. She said it was frank. It was refreshing to hear. She said all elected officials should be afraid, should be worried about losing their seats. They have to answer to the citizens at election, and if she loses, she will lose proudly that she did what she thought was right. So that was quite interesting. But Terrebonne's a go. Like, if there was any doubt, it's a go.
Well, I have to give her credit because I also what I heard in her statements was that there was an openness also to look at some of the objections, and I understand there's some off streets there that are going to be impacted in a negative way, and she's going to talk to them. So, to the people who were opposed and raised objections, I don't think the effort was in vain. I think that there was some people took notice and listened. And last night, I had the pleasure of taking a photo of both, an advocate for the bike path and, a resident who had some objections. And they were talking to each other, were friendly, and it gave me kind of like the goosebumps, like NDG, here we are, right? Like, yeah, we disagree.
Take a Kalesh ride with them?
Yeah. It's like, let's do it.
I mean, to be fair, I think one of the things that I observed throughout this whole debate was not so much a disagreement on the technical aspects of the plan, but on the feeling of not being listened to. Mm-hmm. And no matter what the issue is, that always rises to the surface. Somebody's not content. Somebody feels ignored. And on this, I think people felt they were ignored. And rightly so in some cases. All they heard was a party line. And when I mean party, I mean with a small p. It's just politicians, reading from the script.
Right.
But the moment there's that human connection that people, when you stand at someone's door and they say, this is how it's going to affect my quality of life, that changes everything. And arguing about it on social media and showing disdain for the other group, and there was a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
That doesn't help anybody.
No.
When you turn something into a political football, everybody loses.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I agree. I agree 100%.
Yeah, and
Great.
it's fair. Like when you really did listen to what the objection was, it wasn't necessarily that the bike path was an issue. People were mad that they didn't have a platform that they could be heard at. They felt that the city was responding with generic messages, boilerplates. Now, I can't speak to the volume of messaging that the mayor has to respond to or the right approach to it. I could see how in this era you end up with a lot of templated answers and things to that effect, but there could be a cleaner communication line from their side, but it wasn't. And it was really like there was apparently a plan that got approved in 2020 that everybody liked, and then they didn't really listen to that plan and went forward with a different plan. So that was another grievance that, like, when you think about it rationally, you can see how that would make people directly affected by this unhappy. And then,
well, but let's be clear. Yes, it's more. It's not only just that they don't feel listened to. They're also losing a lot of parking. It's going to change the configuration of the streets. If you're living in a building, if you're 30 units in an apartment building, and now 30 more cars are looking, 30 or 15 more families are looking for a place to park, that's pretty shitty on your part. But the fact that people who criticize this were dismissed as dinosaurs and having no thought or empathy for children or for people who want to find a cleaner, healthier way to get around, that was just nonsense. And that just steals people's nerves.
right.
Yeah. Note to us, right? The community.
And
right.
You know, and as a heads up, I'm going to be writing about this in coming weeks. There was a whiff of that at the last Borough Council where the issue of the behavior of residents and of councillors was brought up. The environment seeming to get a little more hostile. People are becoming more abrasive in their comments, and the mayor had interesting things to say about that, and I'm going to be following up on that. But a lot of that was evident in the night of the info session at the Benny Library, where hundreds of people turned out and papers were thrown on the floor, and there was a lot of booing and heckling. And the mayor had some interesting comments to say about that type of behavior and how she felt about it. And I'm going to be reporting more on that in the days to come. So yeah,
Super interesting.
Everybody's got something to say about this.
It's a big issue.
Yeah, sure. Listen, I mean, it's not only bikes. It's do your elected officials listen to you? And if they're not listening to you, who are they listening to?
But also, is it like, oh, Alex is gone. But also, to add to that, like, is there a valid point that people should be allowed to voice and express themselves in a frustrated public forum? I'm not saying the heckling and stuff, like, because like I was there at that info session. Arguably, the way it was handled at a systemic level due to Quebec and NDG played out in a way where people weren't allowed to ask questions while information was being presented, and then weren't necessarily when they proceeded to ask questions later on, you could tell that the dude who had presented the information was mad frustrated with people asking information, despite the fact that mid-presentation they were told to do that at the end. And then it felt a little bit rushed. We kept getting told the mixed messaging of, we're here all night for you, but also wrap it up. And then I didn't stay.
But there was also frustration that people were asking questions of the expert, and then, you know, they were asking in English and being responded to in French, and they had to wait for the translation from the city councillor. The city councillor had to sit and translate it. So that also, you know, just pushes people a little further away. Which
I think is definitely. I had a lot more empathy for the anti-bike path folk by the end of it, I'll be honest. While there are maybe individuals I'm not a fan of, it's still like there's a lot of more valid points to it than I considered when I first started hearing about it. And the more I learned about the process, it did highlight issues of communication, and I don't have a better solution yet, but arguably the city could start a podcast, and the mayor could do weekly... What?
You want to talk about spin? Oh boy!
I would love that.
We have a live version 24/7. What do you need a podcast to?
Okay, I just crashed.
Was it good for you too?
I just crashed. Or everybody crashed.
No, it was just
I don't know. You
we
kind
kept
of
going.
froze. You looked frightened. So I thought
okay.
you were stunned.
Now everybody froze on me. Well, that's cool. So I just missed all that.
Yeah.
So why don't we go on? The
Perfect.
bike path. I only will say this. You mentioned about how there was some, conversation raised about the antagonistic nature of what's
Yeah.
happening in Borough Council, and I agree. I have felt this antagonism. Both from
I've seen it.
yeah,
I've seen it.
some it wasn't pleasant.
Whether it's rolling eyes or mutterings under one's breath,
Yeah,
that's happening up on the dais as well as in the crowd.
Yeah, and I have to be very frank with the followers and listeners of this show. When I go to council, I'm not getting the impression that we're hearing like sincere, frank conversations or feedback from our elected representatives that are reflective of community needs. I get the sense that party doctrine and ideology is really dominating the discourse, and that concern.
Did you ever feel anything different with the prior administration?
No, it was the same with Applebaum, and I can't talk too much about the Koopman administration because I was not heavily involved. But
if I could interject for a second, one thing that I remarked upon when Koopman came in was his tone kind of set his interventions kind of helped set the tone of council. I remember within the first few meetings when Russell Koopman was mayor, how he would address all sides, and it had a calming, very civil tone to it.
Right.
It didn't feel nobody's back got up.
I gotta give Russell his props. The one time I ever grievanced at him publicly, he responded and made me feel heard.
Who, Russell?
Yeah, I was on Twitter or Facebook or something, and then he addressed the snow removals and what I was annoyed about, and he was so rational about it. I just felt like, well, homie handled stuff. He did what he could.
Russell was a nice fellow. He was civil and respectful, and that goes a long way.
Valerie has never responded to me on Twitter.
I'm sorry?
Said Valerie has never responded to me on Twitter.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, thanks. I was going to say the same thing. All right,
I've had some of her entourage and her surrogates respond to me for what I do. So
okay, fair enough.
Let me get to that.
Okay, so going on. So we have that piece, the Terrebonne bike path that kind of made its way through council, and that's going on. So let's talk about, the Legare intersection in front of the Jewish General. And I think this is an important issue for the borough as a whole. And when you listen to this conversation, I think you understand why. So go.
That passed almost unnoticed for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
It was an item that Borough Council also approved by the city yesterday because it had to be. This is about the stretch of Legare and Côte-Neige between Borough and Côte St. Catherine. That is the block right in front of the Jewish General Hospital.
Mm-hmm. I know it well.
And it's chaotic at best. Sometimes it's quite serene, but you got to catch it at the right time. But there are a lot of issues there. There's traffic, there's taxis, there's people standing outside, there's visitors, patients, employees, cyclists, pedestrians, ambulances.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. And it's been a problem for years. And the borough identified it as an issue of security and public safety years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they will deny it, but it got worse with the Borough bike path because that jammed up the intersection of Borough and Legare horribly, which I wrote about.
Right.
You can't get there from here. And check it out, you'll see. I have photos. But the idea was to redevelop that block, which is just a couple of 100 meters, to reduce the size of the sidewalks, to create a drop-off and pickup zone for the hospital, a safe pedestrian crossing, some vegetation and drainage, and some other work. Very simple, standard stuff, not a big infrastructure project. Well, that fit in perfectly with the Center City's programs, specifically one to secure areas, and they're always talking about securing for active transit, for seniors, for pedestrians. But it was refused by the Center City last year.
Mm-hmm.
And their answer was lack of budgetary limits.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the $7 billion operating budget of the city and the $24 billion PDI infrastructure budget, budgetary limits nixed that project.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the borough services, to their credit, said, no, this is still important. We need to go ahead with that locally, and we need to pick up the bill.
Mm-hmm.
So they did it. They agreed on it. And the interesting part was that at council last week, the local city councilor, Stephanie Valenzuela,
thank you, Joel.
she was effusive in her praise to the bureaucrats for
The services. Yes, I heard
because
that.
they recognize a local problem, and they weren't waiting for downtown to give its blessing. They're just gonna if they said no, now we're gonna try it another way.
Right.
And they went ahead with it. They passed an official resolution to demand permission because Legare is actually a center city responsibility.
It is
an artery.
Yes, it is.
But
can you hone in on that a little
well,
bit more?
yes. Can I?
Sure, go ahead.
Because I worked a lot on this file back in the day. In the borough, there's different class streets, right? There's considered residential streets, and there's called collectors and commercial streets. And commercial and collector streets fall under Central City Authority. It's the Central City that's responsible for maintaining those streets and doing what needs to be done to secure them properly. It's not the borough's responsibility. So in essence, what's happening here with the Legare situation, if I could, Joel, disagree with me if you want, the Central City is basically downloading that responsibility to the borough. The borough is forced to pick it up for security reasons. And that's going to, so we're giving money, the CD and NDG borough, very much like the NDG part, we're giving money to the Central City, like we're giving all these taxes to them, right? And you'd think that some of those taxes would come back, right, to pay for these necessary upgrades, right, for security reasons. And it plays into the Projet Montréal kind of mindset as well, right? But they're not. The money is not coming back to us, right?
Yes. Well, we don't, I asked if that money could be reimbursed or if Central City monies could be shifted from some other priority, and the answer was no.
Right.
There is no cost estimate yet because the plan hasn't been drawn up.
Right.
But it's going to be moving forward immediately.
So are they going to take a loan to pay for that? Are they going to basically?
I don't think it's going to be coming out of the operating budget.
So they're going to have to. They're basically it's the taxation. It's the borough taxes, right?
Okay. The amount I don't think the amount will be colossal because again it's a simple fix.
Right.
But it's the issue that I found interesting and during her intervention at council, Councillor Valenzuela,
it's gonna kill me. I know it. I'm never gonna live this down.
To the bureaucracy for sticking with it. And at one point, she mentioned all the different factors that complicated life in that block. That's known to residents and employees of the hospital, which the mayor, having been an employee of the Jewish General for quite some time, also agreed it was problematic.
Right.
She brought up the bike path, the Borough bike path.
Right.
And at that point, the mayor looked over to her and said, "Wait a minute, are we talking about bike paths?" And it was kind of it was a shot across the bow that a lot of people noticed. It was kind of it almost seemed like a warning, like a caution. But
well,
the project's going to go forward.
Right.
The city approved giving up the responsibility to the borough.
Mm-hmm.
The city's still going to build foot the bill for the bike path, for most of the cost of Jean Briand being turned into a pedestrian zone. But it's hands off of Legare in front of the Jewish.
Well, that comes back to like the whole question of how we're financing infrastructure investments in the borough, right? Last night I went to City Council to ask the specific question because the boroughs have introduced borough taxes. There's two taxes, right? There's a tax for services and a tax for investments. And these taxes have exploded at the borough level. And what you see is that, when Benoit Doré, who's responsible for the finances for the city of Montreal, so he's the head honcho at downtown, when he's saying, we're raising taxes only, in inflation, 4.9%. But when he's making statements like that, he's not including the increase in borough taxes, right? Which, if you include the borough taxes and CDNG on average, CDNG is around 6% increase, right? So it's higher than inflation. But what makes the situation worse is that the city is raising our taxes, the Central City taxes, by 4.9%, but they're only returning 2% back to us. But really, in NDG's case for 2024, as you remember that big conversation I had with Matt Mayer at Gracia, it was only 1.3% because, if the population goes down, if they change
yes, I remember the Norma Ray moment.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly. So and so the big thing too is that you have this the way the finances and the structure of the city is organized. for example, Ville Marie, right, downtown Montreal,
Yep.
what is the borough that in
A lot of money there.
Valley Plan is also the borough mayor. You know what the they call it the richesse foncière, the total like property value in downtown. It's $64 billion. So Valley Plan. The Ville Marie has the lowest taxes in the city. Why? Because borough taxes they don't have to be high because they get so much money. It's large.
And also, I think there's probably a higher proportion of arterial roads and collectors.
Right.
That is not the
That's correct.
responsibility of the borough to repair and maintain.
So all our money going downtown, right?
Well, so
is being spent.
Structure, but there's also the governance of it, which is it's interesting because many boroughs on the island of many of the 19 boroughs have borough councillors and city councillors.
That's correct.
Côte-des-Neiges NDG is different in that it has only city councillors.
That's right.
And yet they still couldn't pull that off. And 3 of the city councillors in Côte-des-Neiges NDG are sitting on the city's executive committee right now.
Right. Yeah, there's...
hold on. Can I just want to interject?
Yeah. Yes.
So if I understand correctly, what Alex is saying is because of the very high property value of downtownish, they can have a lower percentage point and at a revenue level pull in the same amount of money as higher tax rates in other boroughs. On top of that, because of the way it's structured, the specific borough itself isn't responsible for St. Catharines and all these other things. Because if I'm not mistaken,
they have expenses and they have needs related to that, but again, there are responsibilities that belong to the center city, and then there are those that belong
as we discussed, and I learned about the road types when I learned about snow removal priorities, but stuff that like connects you between boroughs, these become more of these connector roads that the city is responsible for. So when you got your St. Catharines and your Maisonneuves and your Sherbrooks and even a lot of the other downtown streets that would connect it would also just can be considered these types of streets as well. So with that being said, what Alex is saying is the people who live in Ville Marie are getting a much better bang for their buck with tax dollars than us, where he'll throw a lot of numbers at you, but let's just say you guys got paid way more than inflation.
Ville Marie also has a distinction, and I don't have these numbers available to me now ready, but I wrote about this a few months ago, that Ville Marie has one of the highest revenues from occupation of public space fees for construction companies that pay to occupy space on the street.
Yes.
And Ville Marie gets a lot of money from that.
Building permits.
Which lends itself to the question of how motivated are they to clear up the roads.
Now the building permits, I know that they consolidated the building permits because that was an objection by the boroughs that weren't getting a lot of construction to say, hey, this is not fair. There's all these building permits going downtown. They're generating all this extra revenue. And Sud-West, right? Sud-West is experiencing massive gentrification, right? And these condos they're going up like weeds, right? So there was, what I do know from my evaluation of the formula, because I've been working on that. I've been to court against the city.
Yeah, I've heard once or twice. Yeah.
You have, eh? And the judge ruled in my
merch done. There might actually be a shirt that has Alex saying I went to court for this.
Yeah, exactly. And the judge just ruled.
On the ball.
About a month and a half ago, the judge ruled in my favor and said to the city, he didn't give him the information. Go back and give him the information. So now they've given me more information. So I've got to go through that and sift through it. Yes, I do this all on a volunteer basis. I'm not paid for this. I know it's mad. I don't understand it. So I am going through this process, and I've learned a lot of things about how the formula works. And there are some things in the formula that are just built against us. And one of the main things I can tell you that's built against us is, first of all, when it comes to borough taxes, it's not fair, because if you're in a borough with much higher, property value, right, you're able to generate revenue a lot easier. And then the other big thing that happens from one borough to the next borough is that the capacity for boroughs to tax their population varies. For example, in CDNEG, people are very sensitive to tax increases, right? It's really a sensitive topic, where Ville Saint Laurent, ironically, gets a lot of money from the central city. Very, very generous in terms of the transfers.
It also has a nice industrial base as well.
Yeah, but they have the highest borough taxes in the city. So Alan D'Souza is whacking them twice, and people don't seem to make a fuss about it. They're okay with it, right?
Well, if you feel like you're getting bang for your buck.
Yeah, but what it's creating is it's creating this city of inequality. You're having these rich boroughs with lots of beautiful services, lots of nice parks, urban furniture. You can see there's some real major investments being made, and it's really contributing to the quality of life. Then you have other boroughs like CD&G are not experiencing or not having the same level of services. So,
Okay.
to me,
can I ask a
yes?
question?
Yes.
So, like, related to what Joel was just saying, a lot of Ville Saint Laurent is giant warehouses.
Yes.
So, do they make more money on commercial?
Yes.
Than
Big
a lot of
time.
revenue from
Huge.
Yeah, sure.
So,
In
the
fact,
fact that NDG then has a lack of such an industrial sector and is so extremely residential, because even if you look at downtown, a lot of that property is commercial.
But Holden, Côte-des-Neiges NDG also has other challenges. It also has more social challenges. It has a highway running right through it.
hospitals, universities,
all these
schools.
properties that are not taxable, that are tax exempt. And when the province gives money in lieu of taxes to the boroughs for those properties, they give it to the center city. They don't give it to the borough.
On that note, I asked for the Central City to give me that data for 2023, and the transfers that we get from the Quebec government for properties that are exempt from municipal taxes, right, are down like 91%. And I asked the lawyer, the city lawyer, why is it down, 91%? Why is it that the revenue that you're generating, tax revenue you're generating from CDNG is lower in 2023 than it was in 2020? It doesn't make any sense with the increasing valuations. And the lawyer kind of told me in a polite way to go fly a kite.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he told me that's it. I do. I have it in print. He told me to go fly a kite. He said, "That's the document. That's it. Goodbye. Have a good day." So you know what I'm gonna have to do now? I'm gonna have to make another access information request for that information.
You have your own parking pass for the court?
I take the metro.
You take the metro?
I don't take my car downtown. Yeah, I don't.
I respect that.
Should you?
Yeah, I think it's first of all, I think it's selfish. And the problem too is I drive a big truck because I'm in the construction industry, so I need lots of space. And the other thing is it's a hassle. I don't want to deal with the traffic. Get in a bus, relax, get there. I like it. It makes me happy, and I get to wear my Trainman in the bus, and everybody looks at me weird.
It's a relaxing way downtown.
Everybody's, who's that crazy? So, there's another tidbit I wanted to make about the borough loans. Okay, you guys are ready for this? I made an access information request for the borough loans because someone anonymously texted me and said, "Look at the loans." I got this message. Am I like, huh? Why would I be? What loans? I didn't even realize that the borough was taking out loans. I didn't have all the years I had been involved. I just realized.
I mean, it's self-circulating. Is it not the finances? It comes out of the.
Yes, it's like a short-term loan. It's like a credit card. It's like a credit card, right? They're basically spending it right away, and then they're taxing us and collecting the money and then paying it off at the end of the year. Yes, that's correct. But just to show you, this is all like these are loans that are being taken for investments, and there's criteria, and if they go outside that criteria, they have to ask for a referendum. You know what I'm talking about, Joel?
Right.
So, but
but the people don't necessarily know. So
okay, I understand, but that's not the important. That's not the important piece of information. I just hold everybody, and I'll get back to that. The important piece of the information is that 2005, right? These loans made up $70 million per year, right? So that's how much the boroughs were taking out for these loans, right? So these are for investment projects, right? Don't forget the Central City was paying for this prior to the establishment of the borough system, right? Right. In 2005, anyone want to take a guess how much the boroughs were lending per year for investments? From 70 million in 2005, now we're at 2020. Do you guys know what it is?
200 million.
$850 million.
That's a big ass number.
That it's went up 159%.
But
so
you're getting something for that. The community gets its parks, it gets its plazas, it gets its
fair enough.
Bollards and sidewalks and sewers.
The Central City used to be paying for this. Right? So when we're talking about that taxation equation and Central City is talking about taxes, they're talking just about what they're charging us. They're not talking about the borough taxes. So when you look at the portfolio of taxes we're paying, they've gone up exponentially, but we haven't had this conversation like, okay, so
if I'm not mistaken, what you're saying is what we've established, and Alex's consistent point is, through the magic of this algorithm they use, we pay way more in taxes than we get back out of the city. And a specific example of all of this is the infrastructure situation, where previously it was managed by Center City. Now it's something the borough is responsible for, and they take out loans on them in the meantime, is what I'm understanding.
What I think the most important thing, I don't want to speak on your behalf, Alex, but I think one of the most important lessons to take away from that, which I have, is that it's not the question that Côte-des-Neiges, Notre-Dame-de-Grâce doesn't get from the Center City. It's just, if you look at it in comparison to other boroughs, and remember, Côte-des-Neiges NDG was not an independent city before. It was part of the city of Montreal.
That's correct.
It was neighborhoods that were shoved together into unnatural neighborhoods. It was like Pointe-aux-Trembles and Rivière-des-Prairies. But it's that. And all these numbers that Mr. Montagano, Trainman, is waving around all the time. From my perspective, the most interesting ones are when you compare what is going to Saint Laurent, what is going to Sud-Ouest, what is going to this borough or that borough, Huntsic-Cartierville, and then he goes around examining and rearranging garbage cans in the borough at a fifth of the cost of what the city's paying for them, and it makes you wonder. And they still can't be maintained properly. It makes you wonder where that money's going. It's just not coming enough grows. Vers l'arrondissement.
Well, as the PDI, Joel, if you remember back in the day, I questioned Mayor Gracia about the investment budget for the borough, and she stated with large conviction, with authority, that the PDI was being financed exclusively by the PDI tax, the borough tax. And what I discovered, this is not true. PDIs are also being subsidized by the central city. So there's some sort of arrangement there. And unlike the formula that exists for our operational needs, the day-to-day, clean up the garbage, clean the park. Budget. The operational budget. The formula is very, you can see it. You can see how it works. But how the PDI formula or how the PDI amount is determined is very unclear. And I confronted Benoit Doré, who was responsible for the finances in downtown. I asked him, why did you get so much money and we get so little compared to Sud-Ouest? And Sud-Ouest has so much going for it right now, right? It's got this explosion of condo development, and on top of that, they have this federal park, Parks Canada, the Lachine Canal. It's paid by the Canadian government. Sud-Ouest is not paying for that, right? It's completely financed and paid and maintained by the Canadian government. We don't have a linear park.
All the hip new restaurants.
Yeah, so but that's another conversation on vulnerable. But okay, wait. We're getting distracted.
No, I mean, I'm involved in the industry. They really do. Like the Sud-Ouest is taking over.
Bicyclette, man.
So Benoit's response was, the reason why we get so much money is because we have all this infrastructure to support. So they got all this cool, like, swimming pools, parks, hot water.
There's a punchline coming, Alex. What is
and he said they have a large vulnerable population. I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. I said,
it makes sense.
It's like, and then okay, so let's split it up. Let's talk about the infrastructure, right? So Sud-Ouest has got all this infrastructure. Okay, that's why they get a lot of money. That's what he said. That's what Benoit said. So I said, okay, so since Sud-Ouest has so much infrastructure and we have so little infrastructure, that would mean that the city is going to be making investments into CDN for us to catch up with the rest of the city because we lack infrastructure, parks, community centers. This was in CBC, right? We have the lowest, amount of community space for our needs in any other borough in the city, right? This is no knowledge. But when you look at the PDI, right, we have the smallest PDI investment budget in this city, bar none, from a per capita perspective. It's lower than Sud-Ouest is. It's lower. Excuse me?
Is that because the projects financed by the center city in the borough are excluded from that calculation?
I asked Peter McQueen that question. You know what he said to me? He said to me that's because the federal government spends all this money here. And I was just like, sorry, Peter, that's total bullshit. Where the federal government spending money here? What money is the federal government spending in CDNDG? It's just, I'm sorry, Peter McQueen, if you listen to the show, that's total bullshit. I'm sorry.
It sets up some parties in the park.
I mean, but at the end of the day, we're still just kind of going around the same point. We spend a bunch of money on taxes and do not get our just
correct
dessert relative to other things. I mean, we could keep going on more specific examples, but ultimately that's not going to change the point. But what's interesting to me is how the places that have a higher commercial area or higher value property because of things like that, and then, you know, stuff like the tax exemptions with like the hospitals and everything here, those are really interesting points that I do think people need to be aware of, so they can ask the same kind of questions Alex is asking. But yeah, end of the day, that is the main point of it. And
sorry about that. I hit my mic. I got this new mic, the boom mic.
Whoa.
Yeah, isn't it large? It's quite large.
Stop waving your large mic around on the internet there, Alex.
But before we digress, I have a little something to say on the commercial piece.
Move it back a little bit.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Like that? So I have a little. So commercial properties in the city of Montreal are taxed higher than residential properties. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the, you know, I have a portrait fiscal that they prepare and they for each borough. I don't know if you've seen that, Joel, but you should take a look at that. It's a very interesting document. I have it for each borough. I had to fight for that too. I had to go to the Access Information Court for that document. It's just ridiculous. And in that document, believe it or not, CDNG has a larger richesse foncière, so property value, the total is larger than Ville-Saint-Laurent, but they generate more taxes from Ville-Saint-Laurent because there's more commercial property, right?
Right.
And the other important point about commercial property is that the city does not pick up garbage. You know, in Ville-Saint-Laurent, you've got like these factories that are manufacturing things. Mm-hmm. The city does not pick up their garbage. The businesses are responsible for their own waste disposal. So the city doesn't provide.
Does that explain why the businesses, why they're doing such a bad job around Queen Mary?
I can't. That is another piece. I don't want to get into that, but I've been fighting that battle for a long time, Joel. Nasty. But it is nasty, and I agree with you. It's very unpleasant, and I don't think the city should show any tolerance for that because this is a residential area. So I just don't understand how it's allowed to happen, and it's been going on from as long as I've been around. It's been happening, and that's not excuse. It's unexcusable. So. They just so back the city doesn't have to provide garbage services. The services that the city provides to commercial properties are extremely limited. They're like, you're a business. The city's got this philosophy. You're a business, right? What you need and what you generate is that's it. So I got a little note here from you, Joel, that you want to move this along.
No, man, it was like the same point. We're not really adding value to this. We've drilled.
No, because I was actually backed up a couple of points.
All right, so let's go on. Let's talk about the piece here on systemic racism. This is a big piece. Gracia was appointed to the executive committee to handle this file, and she was on Elias. Yeah. She was on CGAD. She was interviewed by Elias. If anybody wants to pronounce his last name, and again, that would be appreciated.
Joel's the
Elias
pronouncer guy.
Makos.
Montreal, you need to know how to pronounce a Greek name.
Yes. So let's talk about that.
Hold on. The important piece of information. The mayor of Côte-des-Neiges, Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, has been appointed to the executive committee.
Yes.
She has two files under her responsibility. It's a racism and a systemic discrimination, as well as human resources. Mm-hmm. And she's been appointed as, I believe she's the advisor to Valerie Plante on reconciliation with the indigenous communities. So she just picked up a lot of responsibilities. Her portfolio just went. And that's in addition to being mayor of the largest borough and sitting on the board of directors of the SDM.
Right.
So she's going to have to deal with all the indigenous issues across Montreal, or is it limited?
Well,
she's
going to be working on behalf of the mayor. I don't know how much she'll be working on files.
She's the one that's going to have to deal with when my girlfriend and Nakasik go after them for all of the homeless negligence they have.
she maybe have to be the one to stand there and take it. I don't know. That's kind of
Understood.
Yeah.
And people should know that when someone's appointed to the board of the STM or is appointed to the executive committee, there's extra compensation that goes with that. So
there's always extra compensation for everything.
Yeah. So I'm not saying to minimize or trivialize.
If she's going to get paid, if she is going to get yelled at by a lot of not-for-profits
yes,
and things,
I'm not saying that it shouldn't happen, but
extra cash, in my opinion.
But
that's
being
what
part
you're
of
getting paid for.
Well, you have three councillors. You have three members on the executive committee. Now you have Despina Sorias, the city councillor for Loyola. She's now responsible for housing on the executive committee. And Magda Popianu, who's responsible, she keeps her same post, which is organizational efficiency and, dealing with 311, that type of thing, trying to modernize certain systems. But the scuttlebutt is she's not going to be around for long, like maybe at the next election, but that's politics. That's a different story.
But
yes.
Hold on, but can I just ask, is it an issue if 3 of our city people are on the executive committee?
Well, the mayor, she made the point at last Borough Council meeting that she said her being appointed to the executive committee is excellent news for the borough because it means more collaboration with the center city, and it means it has a better payoff for the borough. So,
that's the hope.
I would think so.
Yeah, but remember, Michael Applebaum was mayor.
She's got the executive committee's ear all the time and the mayor's ear all the time. That matters.
Yeah, but remember, Michael Applebaum was the mayor of Montreal for a short term. He was the deputy mayor.
The mayor.
But he didn't resolve the financial issues that were confronted by the borough. And he, in fact, even unlike this administration, he actually recognized the financing problem of the borough. They actually voted against the budget one time, if you remember correctly, and that has never happened again. That's only happened once. That was when Warren Almond.
So now, Mayor Katahwa is comfortably ensconced in the executive committee.
Yes,
she's got a whole lot more responsibilities, but she's got a whole lot more clout. One would say.
Well, I hope.
I hope that pays off for
I hope
real action.
So my understanding then, Joel, is that the truth is in her original position, her protesting at that moment may not have been politically advantageous, and now that she's gained clout in the system, her voice allegedly should carry more weight and allow her to be the woman of action. Well,
she's in a position to make change. She has power. She has a voice. She has authority. And I think you said woman of action because that's a shot across the bow because that's what happened on the CJAD. That clip went viral.
What happened on CJAD? Tell us.
Well, she was on CJAD with Elias on Elias Mako's show, talking. The conversation. The interesting part, I'll go over this quick, is that she was talking about the Outremont bylaw. She was asked about the Outremont bylaw about idling, parking your car. You can only idle for 10 seconds in certain conditions. And she made an excellent point. She said, elected officials, whether, even if it makes people uncomfortable or it's inconvenient, they have to make decisions for the greater good. And he was saying to her, yeah, but there's countries that are flaunting the rules and you're worried about us idling our cars in Montreal. And she says, well, and he asked, are you just going to talk people to death about this type of stuff? And she said, no, she's a woman of action. And she believes that decisions have to be made for the greater good. You can't just talk about it forever. You have to act. And she did bring up an interesting point. When the city banned smoking from bars and restaurants, a lot of people freaked out. They thought everybody was going to go out of business. And I, as an ex-smoker, 19 years and a few weeks now, I really appreciated that. And the sky did not fall.
So did I. It was an awesome decision.
So she used that as an example. So kudos to her for that.
No, she was pretty articulate. About it. I mean, he was trying to kind of drive home the point, if I'm not mistaken, that the government shouldn't be micromanaging to that point. And the reality is, it's ludicrous. That's it. And I mean, I'm glad I heard about that because, I do Uber, and it does sound mad inconvenient. If anytime I'm in Outremont,
Uber, you're going to have an exemption. Delivery people have an exemption.
Oh, that's lit. Because, I was just saying, having to stop and wait for somebody. And
there are a lot of exemptions. There are a lot of exemptions.
But that means the regular
That's a problem,
person,
but whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
This is mostly geared at all the people who pick up their kids in schools in the area in Outremont.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kids.
Well, that's a general problem I see in the city as a whole. From my perspective, like when I was young, we used to walk to school, right? And now all the kids get driven, and that's not a good thing. And I think that drives also insecurity
do you know
on the streets, right?
What the number one reason why less parents allow their kids to walk to school or take their bike, and why they insist on bringing them by car?
Please tell.
Because there's more cars taking kids to school.
That's it.
So they're worried. So
it's a vicious cycle.
Take their kids. The fellow from Bixie who came to the borough to explain why they have this challenge of getting more active transit for kids to walk to school the way we did,
right?
Is because more parents are worried about all the cars, so that they bring a car. And
I remember
it comes to the point where somebody recently complained that they were stuck in traffic on Fielding. They didn't like the bike path, and somebody from Côte Saint Luc said, "I can't believe this is terrible. I'm stuck in traffic." And then someone corrected him wisely and said, "No, you are the traffic."
Right.
You're not stuck in traffic. You are the traffic.
Well, I remember when my son was young. I live in Western NEG.
On Fielding.
Yeah. I remember when I was young, and I live in Western NEG. My son went to Elizabeth Ballantyne Elementary School. He walked to school, and I got calls. I got calls from the school administrators. Is what's going on? I go, what do you mean? What's going on? Your son is walking to school and going home by himself. I said, what's the problem with that? It's like,
they didn't come and pick you up.
I was shocked. Yeah. Or they complained that he was going to the park and he was playing out after school and he was fooling around. So as a young boy, isn't that what they're supposed to do? I'm confused.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
But Elias kind of called out Gracia.
Yeah, but it wasn't on the environment. It was on racism, because as the new executive committee member responsible, she talked about how her job, she's going to be going to the different departments and talking about proper
also,
conduct.
Alex, one of the people watching was the person who called out the person being in traffic.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, it was a great line. Whoever you were, it was a great
line. Yeah.
And I tell that story quite often, so thank you. So Makos asked her about Bochra Manai. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly.
No, you're not. You're mucking it up. I'm just making that up.
Systemic racism and discrimination in the city. That is, the city departments investigating and accompanying people with their complaints. As we know, over the last year, a lot of stories about inherent systemic racism in the city ranks, especially in the blue collar service, and even among management as well. I've covered this. The Red Coalition has been working on this as well. Anyway, some time ago, after the slaughter in Israel, Ms. Manai, the commissioner, participated in some questionable social media behavior and attended some rallies, including one where an imam was calling for the death of Zionists and the enemies of his people, and that Premier Legault actually dubbed as a hate speech, and others as well, and it is being investigated. Anyway, she's expected to maintain a better profile than that. A lot of groups were clamoring for her to resign or for Valerie Plante to sack her. That didn't happen, but she did pledge to do better. She was given a reprimand, apparently. And she did reach out to some organizations to try to build bridges again. But the point of your question on the interview was, Makos asked, "Are you going to do something about that, about her?" And the mayor, Katahwa, responded that she's not going to, criticize or disparage a public servant in public. So that's her line. She won't do that, but the issue was dealt with. But then he said to her, "Well, that doesn't sound like much action."
Right.
But what Holden brought up of her being a man of action.
Well, because she said she was a woman of action beforehand, and then he kind of called back to that to kind of call her a hypocrite.
She kind of got hoisted on her own petard there by saying that, and he gave it right back to her. It was a gotcha moment, but he did make a point, and he said, that had this happened regarding any other community in Montreal, a black community, the gay community, any community, the employee in question would be gone.
Yeah,
gone.
He said that. I heard that.
And he attributed that to what he said is a problem within Projet Montréal in its left flank, its extreme left flank. There's a problem with anti-Semitism, and that's something that's been suspected by a lot of people for some time. But he did challenge her. She did say, "I've heard you." What happened there? "I've heard you." She's heard the comments. and that she's committed to moving forward and working for everybody and for the city, and that everybody deserves to feel safe and included. And until, I guess, people or groups or communities see otherwise, they'll have to take her at her word.
Well, I was going to
say,
yes.
Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead, Holden. Sorry, I apologize.
I was going to say, like, I mean, I do want to give her, like, a little bit of the benefit of the doubt with it. There, Joel's coming back. Yeah, you went out of focus for whatever reason.
Yeah, sorry.
But I believe that, like, she legitimately has a point. Maybe it isn't the best place to fully just jump out and condemn a public servant arbitrarily because it's being asked of you by people. If it is something that was dealt with behind closed doors, that isn't an action. It's just she's not pandering to his demand, which is a completely different thing. So I don't know. I don't feel like it's the biggest gotcha moment. I think he just tried to create it. But like, to that point, she wasn't necessarily condemning her publicly, but like what she was saying, she doesn't feel it's her response. And isn't she in charge of HR too? Which puts that extra, like, she can't be out there as the HR person scolding employees and then being
remember,
impartial.
hold on. She's not an HR manager. She's not an actual HR official for the city of Montreal. She's an elected official responsible on the executive committee. So when it comes to legislation and when it comes to issues citywide, she's the point person. So she has to be aware of what's going on. She knows what's going on. That's not to say that I disagree with you, that it doesn't, if something is deemed to be dealt with, bringing it up again and again might be counterproductive. And I believe she said, the point is to work with civil servants, to gain trust in the staff, and to have positive relationships. And so like I said, it remains to be seen. But the issue was that the momentum of that conversation slowed to a grinding halt, talking about all the things that can be done to. She became quite reserved at that point. But it was fair game. She's amply compensated for her role, and she is a voice, and she's going to be more prominent in the city.
Well, I had a problem with the Elias interview. And the problem I had with the Elias interview is Elias, unlike yourself, Joel, and unlike myself, I should say, hasn't been really following the borough, the CDNEG borough scene closely like we have. And I can tell you from, attending council and listening to the statements of the borough mayor, and running against her in the election, I can tell you that I really don't get the sense that there's a genuine kind of like narrative or action plan on her part of dealing with these serious issues. And I think that when you look at the borough itself, CDNG, we've been collectively under attack by the CAC administration in a number of different ways. A lot of anti-immigrant rhetoric. There's been
not the borough per se, but the demographic makeup.
Yeah, and I haven't heard the borough mayor stand up and talk against any of these declarations that either the provincial government's made. We are the most populous borough in the city of Montreal, and from what I know and the stats I've seen, we're the most ethnically diverse borough in the city of Montreal. And also it's also the language issue, right?
But when it comes to the city and the administration, that means diddly squat.
Yeah, but it does. But Gracia is our borough mayor. She's supposed to be representing us, right? And then I don't know if people are aware, but in CDNEG in the 60s, we lost a whole whack of people. We were 180,000 people. We still haven't recovered from that, right? And
where'd they all end up? In Terrebonne?
And they left, right? They left us. Now, where did they go? That's a discussion to have. But there's no denying that during that period there was a number of there was a legislation that was introduced by the provincial government. Whether you want to agree with it or not, the conversation is not about that. What the conversation is, what was the impact on our community? And the impact, we lost about 20,000 people. Our population dipped from 180,000 people, to just under 160, and we're still recovering from that. And then now there's new legislations that have been introduced related to CJEPs, universities, out of province students,
and being
international
a central borough,
students. It's just a
you feel the
constant.
brunt of all of it. Yes.
It's a constant onslaught, and these are things that are going to impact us directly in a negative way. People are going to leave. I'm seeing it right now. It's Black History Month, and believe it or not, the poster that they are postering all over the city by Garfield is a former NDGer. He's not here anymore. He's in Edmonton, or I think Alberta, or somewhere in Edmonton. I think he's Edmonton, now Calgary. I can't remember, because his wife couldn't find gainful employment in CDNG. And we have a large West Indian population contingent. West Indian refers to the Caribbean, right? Jamaica and that community, and they're suffering a double whammy in terms of marginalization issues. First of all, they're Black, and the second issue is that they're Anglophones. And I've talked to de Bellefoy about this, who's with the Red Coalition, and I am connected to quite a few people in the West Indian community through my business activities. And I get that feedback that they feel like they are really not welcomed here anymore. And the
Anglophone component doesn't help.
No, and I haven't seen. Gracia is not from the borough. She's an outsider, just like she's moved here, thank God for that. But she's of West African descent, right? And I do really see that being expressed itself in the hiring practices by the public sector. They want to have visible minorities, but they want to have people who know how to speak French and who can integrate in what their vision of what Quebec should be.
So unless you're going somewhere specific with this, I would ask you how you feel about Denis Corderre, who made a comment about English, that people are losing their shit.
Well, I didn't see that. I didn't.
Was the comment?
You talked to us about that.
He was sitting at Snowden Deli with Aaron Rand and Bill Brownstein.
Right.
They did an interview.
Yeah.
And he was asked about Bonjour High and English and the onslaught with the tuition and the language rules. And he said, "Listen, if I'm served in English, I don't buy. I don't shop there. That's it." He said, "Be proud of your language. Don't point to other people to blame for if it's in decline. Just speak what you want to speak." Now, a lot of Anglophones lost their shit about this.
Right.
How dare he? That's not a leader. And I said, well, hold on a second here. Hasn't the gripe been for so long? Leave businesses to be, let them make a living. If they serve people in the language they want, they'll do well. If they don't, they'll go down the tubes.
Right.
They'll deserve it. And that'll be the end of it. Let the market decide. And that's what Anglophones have kind of suggested for so long. Mm-hmm. But now all of a sudden, everybody's a snowflake. No, you can't say that. We have to. So it's okay to have, little gray men and women coming to your business establishment with clipboards and measuring tapes and checkboxes and questioning your employees to see their fluency and looking at your keyboards and the buttons on your microwave to see if you're a right-thinking bon Québécois. No, I personally would prefer that you want my business or you don't want my business. If you disrespect me in a variety of ways, I'll make that decision. But by him saying that, all of a sudden everybody said, that's it. Denis Corderre doesn't care about the English people. But when you trail that along with the last election, when Joe Ortona,
yes, I remember that incident very well.
Marielle Slate, when he was running in Loyola,
right,
because of his stand against Bill 96,
right,
and because of the EMSB stand on Bill 96, yeah, and on Quebec nationhood.
Yeah, he called out Quebec nationalism, right?
And Denis Corderre,
and that was a faux pas.
Lost him from the local party.
Yes. Yeah.
Gabriel Reda stood in to run.
Gabriel Reda, yes. God bless his soul.
But people remember that. But Corderre is now on his charm tour. Like next year, he's going to pronounce at some point this year, whether he's running or not. Right. But he's feeling the waters. But so that stood out to a lot of people.
What do I think about Corderre? This is what I think about Corderre. I think he's a symbol of the lack of imagination of our political establishment. It's like we're just going to recycle people. And now there's talk about Adelaide, right, the former Liberal leader, of now heading up Assemblée Montréal, right? Have you heard?
Anglade. Dominic Anglade. I think that was a bit of a red herring. I think some some
you did,
disturbers
but I
started
just
a rumor
yeah,
mill
but
about that.
yeah, but I just think
It could be a trial balloon.
yeah, but I just think that Corderre is he was the head of the Quebec division of the Liberal Party, Federal Liberal Party of Canada. He was mayor of Montreal, and he
Immigration minister.
He ran immigration. You know more about his political history than I do. And as a Gen
He was a
Xer,
great member of Parliament. I dealt with him from a journalism perspective in Montreal North for years.
Right.
He was a great member, a great retail politician.
Right.
He was known for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I salute the man. He's he gets up every day and he's he faces the music and he's really a survivor. You got to give that to him. Like kudos to him. But I just like, isn't there somebody new who could bring a new energy and new perspective, to the political landscape? I just feel like we're always recycling like these.
There's some buzz about Jean Charest's son. Is it Antoine Dion?
Right. Again, it's a
Riggsy, who already nixed it, who already said no, thank you. The M&A from Saint Laurent.
From what I understand, though, like trying to get into politics, as I learned when I talked to a bunch of y'all 3 years ago or whatever, is it's wildly expensive, and you probably won't win if you're not associated with a party. So
sure.
Yes. I can speak to that.
So with that being said, what is the incentive for a lot of people who can barely afford to pay for bills to
very little incentive?
You bring up a good question, but then there's getting into politics, and then there's getting into politics. It's one thing to run as an independent city councillor, and there's another to run for the leadership of the Quebec Liberal Party, which is basically just a rump now, and to try to take it to a position of power and to become premier of Quebec.
What do you mean it's just a rump? What do you mean by that?
Well, because I mean, the Liberal Party is a shade of what it was. But what's interesting about Corderre, and I wrote about this, about that poll, that Legare poll, that found that under Corderre, the Liberals would do very well, and they would drain a lot of Federalist support from the CAQ. There's already bleeding support to the PQ on the sovereignist side.
Right.
So the CAQ should be cacking in their pants right now at the idea of
that choice of name always makes me laugh. But thank you for that plug there, Joel.
So they they should be concerned about that,
right?
And Corderre would do better with liberal voters than any other current Liberal candidate. So far so good.
Yeah, I guess the numbers make sense, but I guess I'm still stuck. And it's an Alex thing, okay? I'm still stuck.
I understand your point.
This whole nepotism that happens in this country, like Jean Charest's son, like who's the prime minister of this country? It's the son of Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, and when you look at the political elite in this country, for example, even Anna Gainey, she's married to.
We have a comment from Adam asking if the poll had any other Liberal leaders they compared against.
Yes, Frédéric Beauchemin. I believe even Marc Tanguay, who's the interim leader, who a lot of people thought should have jumped at the chance to actually be the permanent leader, but he didn't. And Marwa Riggsy as well, but she dismissed the idea. She's not interested. But I have reason to believe she's not completely 100% serious in her rejection of the idea.
Oh, she's just teasing us.
No, maybe she just hasn't decided, and it's Corderre is out there, which does a favor for other candidates because they get to pace themselves, choose when to engage or not, to see what happens. If there was a wave of popularity for Corderre, they probably would sit back,
right?
But the Liberal Party has a lot of challenges,
Well, they're
self-relevant outside the West End of Montreal.
Well, but I don't even know why they're relevant in the West End of Montreal because it's habit. When I look at the Quebec Liberal Party, when I hear what they say, when you listen, they're always trying to play both sides of the equation at the same time, especially if you're listening to the French news, right?
Right. Well, they have to appeal. They have to appeal to more than just Anglophones.
They do.
Communauté culturelle. They have to go beyond into the regions, into the French communities. And that has to happen, and that means policies and orientations that are not necessarily always warm and fuzzy for Anglos and angry phones.
Angry phones. I hate that expression. I can't stand that expression.
Basically what it is.
I'm not an angry phone. I'm a Franco-faché, okay?
Okay, I know you are.
People tend to just kind of look at this issue like the Liberals are the English party, and nobody else is the English party. So that's my understanding of how a lot of people who do end up voting in the younger demographics, at least, perceive the situation.
Well, that stems from a sense for the longest time that Anglophones have been taken for granted. Like I had an M&A, and M&A ask me more than 10 years ago, a person who once they got the first time, they were a Liberal soldier their whole life, they got elected as an M&A like that. All they have to do is walk a straight line. They have a job for life in that riding. And she said to me, I heard, and this was at a time when the Quebec government, under the Liberals, was closing a loophole that allowed more people to feed into the English school system, which was choking under a linguistic chokehold for generations.
Right.
A tiny, tiny drop in the water to keep the system going.
Right.
And it had no effect on the Francophone system. And she said to me, someone told me they think that we take Anglophones for granted. Is that true? I said, what planet have you been living on? Of course they think that.
Right.
Of course they think that. When you get out of your Liberal caucus bubble,
right,
you'll see that people. But again, Anglophones complain about certain issues. They, if you're going to complain about apostrophes on a submarine sandwich menu, then I personally have no patience for you, and I have no sympathy for you.
Yeah,
I of healthcare, of justice, of the courts, of taxation. That's a different story.
Yeah, but
as long as we focus and stop buying into the bait, being distracted by shiny little outrages, until that happens, people aren't going to take your gripes seriously, nor should they.
Well, Joel, I hear you, and I agree with you. I don't contest that whatsoever. I think that the people who are still in Quebec, like myself, who are Anglophones, like I'm a mixed heritage, right? So is Holden, and so are you, for that matter. I think we've accepted, the kind of base rules of, okay, we live in Quebec, and yes.
How am I mixed heritage?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're not mixed.
99% Ashkenazi Jew.
Okay, I take that back. I take that back. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is you're not Anglophone, is what I'm trying to say. You're not English from England.
Oh no, there's no Union Jack.
Yeah. So following on my point, I was getting distracted here. I think that I think the majority part allophone, and Holden has Jewish roots as well. So there. So
I'm definitely on the Ashkenazi side.
We just keep on getting sidetracked here. My point is that I think that a large portion, or the majority, the vast majority of the allophone Anglophones in Quebec have accepted the kind of like base narrative that Quebec's a French province and we have to make an effort to speak French. But at the same time, I think that, when you talk about these incidents about complaining about apostrophes, that happens in, the Francophone nationalists, Piquiste population. They're complaining about that there's a piece of English word on a product as well, right? But we don't go around calling them Franco-fasces or that calling them like, it's always the focus. It's always.
I'm gonna have to say, Alex, you might not. There are 100% people that actually do, in fact, go out there and call them Franco-Nazis and all this other type of shit. Yeah, that's a real thing. And unfortunately, to Joel's point, I think these are kind of smokescreen issues that take away from it. It isn't like you ever really.
Yeah, but you don't get the press reporting on Franco-fasces and talking about Anglophones. This doesn't happen. You only have the press talking about Anglophones, and I have an issue with that. You never hear the French press calling out Francophones for like these indiscretions or these kind of like what we call fanatical outbursts.
It's in the opinion sphere,
right?
And it's talked about and it's acted upon. People make complaints. People call their local officials. There are people with serious concerns about that. But again, Anglophones have created in themselves kind of a convenient punching bag. By again, I know there's a lot of people who are offended by the idea of a unilingual menu in a private commerce, and they think it's just a slippery slope till they're shown the door to the 401 like their neighbors did.
Right.
But I mean, really,
I don't see
so
that.
Much bigger fish to fry, and it's 2024. And if you can't order something off a menu, it's either because you don't want to or you can't.
And we're like,
If
and
you
even
can't,
when
well,
the
okay, you have a right,
occasional,
but don't.
I don't
but
see that. Like I
even
beg to
to that
differ.
end,
You must agree with me, Mr.
I
no,
don't.
Montagano.
I'm
Alex,
sorry.
It's all
no, but
about agreeing
Alex,
with
like
me.
I
I love
personally
you,
have
Joel. I do.
encountered
Even though I can't
anecdotally,
pronounce your last name.
but like
Sorry.
anecdotally, I have experienced the same attitude Joel's talking about. People get really focused on these really minutia of things. As an example, every now and again, you will have a person who works in a hospital or somebody be really shit about healthcare in English or something. And that's like 1 in a million cases. I could tell you 99% of the time I contact the government, they hear me speak in French or whatever, and they're like, nah, let's just get to English. Let's just get this shit over with.
This is how crazy it is. During the pandemic, I went to my pool where I train, where I swim, and I had an employee. He was apparently turned out to be a volunteer at the door who couldn't speak a word of English, questioning people about COVID. And I refused to answer him. And it wasn't because of a language beef. It was because I was sick of being asked about COVID every time I went swimming, which in the pool is probably the safest place on the planet to be. Anyway, so, but at the same time, around the same month, I had to go with my child to a hospital for blood tests. And the English pediatric hospital, the children's, was unreachable. I could not get any information from anybody about where I needed to go, where I needed to be for a specific reason. Completely unhelpful. And in the time it took for them to call me back after I said I'm calling the ombudsperson, I drove to Saint Justin, parked, went in, had the test done, and got home before the children's even called me back. And in that whole time, the guy at the parking booth, the information desk, the nurse was from Senegal, the parking guy was from Tunisia, the security guard was from Morocco, all francophones, even the pure laine white francophone Quebecois. Not one person had a beef speaking to me in English. I didn't demand it, but they could hear in my accent, and when I was talking to my son, they would actually switch to English. And it's an amazing hospital, and the attitude was amazing, and there were no gripes, no problems, no grimaces, no clenched teeth, no rolling of the eyes. Yet, in Côte Saint-Luc, I have a guy at the counter asking me questions in French only. When I asked him, hey man, you don't speak any English? He's like, a little bit, français, c'est plus français. I was like, really? So we all, I say, we need an adjustment, man. We need some kind of like chiropractic treatment of our attitude.
And I just think it's important to bring up the hospital things because, like, I feel like sometimes people flying these red herrings around, and then what happens is the memes start getting created and they start getting shared around. And what goes on is in little micro bubble communities around when people share the information in small group chats and like share it with each other. Because keep in mind, what you see publicly on social media is maybe 10% of the population max. You will never get a higher than 10% participation rate of vocalized social media. So most people are lurkers and sharing information on the low. And the problem is that a lot of incorrect information comes. So now all of a sudden, if everyone's griping about shit that isn't real, like it isn't actually a concern in Montreal to deal with language issues in a hospital. But you get that get brought up a lot because some random hospital 143 kilometers outside of Montreal maybe didn't have an English person on staff that one day. And then this all gets grouped together.
But that could equally happen at a clinic here in Montreal. I mean, these things happen. They do happen. But again, like the reason I brought it up is because there's things we should be getting angry about and things we shouldn't be getting angry about.
Okay, so let's redirect the conversation because I'm getting lost in this. I'm like, what is it that we should be getting angry about? Let me throw that at you.
Good question.
But as you're like a journalist, you're following the local scene. You're going to all the borough council meetings, right? You're watching city council as well. I just discovered
on this issue. Think on this issue,
right?
I think in part of the broader discussion, there has to be more of a discussion and more of a question of why there are not more French courses available to non-Francophones that don't qualify as immigrants or on social assistance.
Right.
That it's difficult for people who are working poor to attend French classes because they're not. They're actually a very convenient scapegoat in my mind. But that said, justice, police services, hospitals, and even civic administration. You know, if people are going to their city council and asking a question in English, if a person is capable of responding in English, they should. they should out of respect.
Yeah, but
But if they
Bill 96 now says they don't have to, right? That's the bill.
So any politician who says, I cannot respond to you publicly at the microphone in English because the law doesn't allow it,
Right.
is an asshole.
I agree. I do.
Like, read my lips.
What's the consequence of them doing that? Out of
Nothing.
curiosity.
There is no consequence.
No consequence.
It
It happened to me. I went to Borough Council and I asked council a question, and it was redirected to a civil servant.
Hold on, but that's a civil servant. Civil servant doesn't work for you, Alex. Their job is to respond, is to answer to the director, to Stéphane Plante,
right,
and to the mayor.
Fair enough.
But
right. But I had
hold on. At the lowest bar of decency, of respect, of courtesy, is to you didn't approach in some exotic language. You didn't approach in Yiddish or Maori.
No,
you approached in English.
Can't.
And for an elected official to respond to you in another language just because they feel like it,
right,
and not because they're not capable of speaking that other language,
right,
because they don't feel like it, or just they prefer otherwise. It's uncivil.
So we should be angry. Should we be angry about that? Basically,
about everything.
So we should be angry about that.
Well, I don't know if you should be angry about it. I think you should. I saw this Mark Perez from Snowdon who went to Villeray Saint Michel Park Extension to talk bike paths there, and he asked the question of Laurent Lavigne-Lalonde, the mayor of that borough, and she started answering. She says, "I'm going to answer in French, so I'm more comfortable." He says, "Well, a lot of people gave me these questions to ask as well, so I prefer you respond in English."
Right.
And some people looked with horror, like, imagine such a thing to ask to be responded to in the language you asked the question. And she didn't think twice about it. She just answered in English.
Right.
So it was a little harder for her.
But let me.
She's the mayor. She's the CEO of a community.
Right.
So maybe trying a little harder is nice.
Right.
He wasn't going up to the services, the head of public works, and saying, sing God Save the Queen.
Right.
Question to the mayor.
Right. Fair enough. But back on CDNDG, right?
Yeah.
Like, we are the largest Anglophone community in Quebec. People don't realize that we are. And
we've played with the census.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's we've had that conversation, right? Because the Filipinos effectively communicate in English. That's their language of, working language.
The
Italians.
Narrative for the last 30 years has been: be proud of your mother tongue.
Right.
Proud of your mini communities, multiculturalism. So when you check off that box on the census and say your first language is Italian or Greek or Tagalog or whatever, the nationalists in Quebec wave that and say, "Oh, cool, you're not an Anglophone, so stop complaining."
It's a talk track that Project Montreal gave me when I went downtown and asked them, would you endorse or support bilingual status for CDNEG? And the response was, well, and CDNEG is got a lot of immigrants. That was basically the response to me. They didn't say that they would support it. And what's ironic about that situation is that in the 1960s, CDNEG was primarily very much an Anglophone community. And what happened is, because of the introduction of these laws that a lot of people took objection for, maybe we'll call them angry phones, which I don't like that word. They left. Our population dipped.
Well, I don't think angry.
Wait. Let me finish. Let me finish. You guys are interrupting me. Yes. When the population falls from 180 to 160,000, then you have all these immigrants that come and fill in the void, the vacuum, right? Yeah. Well, it's like, it's a weird situation to be in, right? It's self-prophesying, right? You create an environment that marginalizes us. We leave, right? And then you use that as a rationale to deny us, bilingual status.
Again, it's about shrinking demographic weight and also of relevance. Because if you recall, I think it was I don't know if it was you or that fellow Mark Perez, who asked the council before Bill 96 if they'll continue to provide the information to people in English in the borough.
It was Mark Perez who asked that question.
Okay, so it was you. It was.
No, I think it was Mark Perez. It was Perez that asked the question.
So the mayor answered. They want to make sure that they give out information in Mandarin, in Luanga, and all kinds of languages, which was nice, but not the point.
Yeah.
Because while Luanga and Mandarin are important, English is an official language in Canada, and it's been and to have that courtesy, to have that right to receive services or information being removed is not the same as saying we're going to have a babel of languages and we're going to give out information in 50 languages. It's not the same. And so that's where I find that people start to get feeling like they're not respected, like their space is shrinking in the world.
Andrew Cadell of the task force, the president of the task force, also took exception to Gracia's comments on that as well. And now she's in charge of the systemic racism file, and I question her credibility on the dossier because as borough mayor, she really hasn't been an advocate in my mind for the marginalized communities within her own borough. And when I'm talking about those marginalized populations, I'm talking about the Anglophones, of course, the Allophones, the West Indian population. So I will say this, right? I ran against her in one of the debates. I was in the debate with her, with Neil Muckerby and Matthew Kerr, who ran for. Did I get his name? Matthew Kerr, who ran for Ballarat Homos, and she made the grandiose statement in that debate because the question of systemic racism came up. She made the grandiose statement that Valerie Plante recognized and saw, recognized systemic racism, and we're like, what? Do you remember that Ballarat Homos did this kind of political miracle? He collected 20,000 signatures to force the issue, right? That forced Valerie Plante's hand to recognize that there was a problem with systemic racism in the city.
Firsthand with her, right?
And I was just totally put off by that. And Neil's like, what? and Matthew's like, how can you make a claim like that? That's absolutely, it's not credible. So I'm very she calls herself.
Remember that Valerie was not down for body cams on the cops.
Yeah. So if she says she's a woman of action, right? I'm really I'm watching, right? I'm watching it, but I don't have any high hopes. I really don't.
It's premature to just make the assumption. I do believe she's probably experienced a couple of things in her life that have her open to.
Of course.
Understanding what discrimination is at a level that even the allophone community won't. And as much as I want, one of the jokes in my life is Legault made white men minorities in Quebec, and because it's a preposterous idea to me inherently that it's real, but it's not a fake thing. It's really one of the only places here where we kind of experience any level of what other minority groups in other places go through. Not to put it at a real equivalency, but just you kind of are in a ballpark where you can connect to it at a deeper level, because there are systemic challenges that prevent you based on an accent you might have or a name you may have. I mean, my last name's French, so it's actually served to my benefit a lot in Quebec. It has the opposite impact. And I don't know, I just think that she still is in a position where she probably is more tapped into communities than we're aware of, and on issues like discrimination and racism, I think we have to give her a chance to.
We see what we see. We don't see everything. We see what we see.
Right.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I agree that when it comes to something like anti-Semitism, that's a big topic, but I don't want a blanket statement that she doesn't know how to handle these topics. I don't know where she is on every single issue, but I do think it's worth giving her the opportunity to win or fail first.
Well, she has another 2 years, right? We'll see what happens. She has another 2 years, so we'll see what happens, right?
I think what you just brought up is very relevant, Holden, about anti-Semitism, because what I've seen is, people have asked me, do you think Valerie Plante is a racist? Do you think she's anti-Semite? Do you think she has a problem with the community? And I think there's more a lack of seriousness than an antipathy towards certain groups. There's just a lack of, when she put out her tweet, or her staff put out her tweet after the synagogue was firebombed, and she said the firebombing of a mosque is unacceptable in Montreal. And some people called her out on that and said that's more than a typo. That's somebody who doesn't know better. That's somebody, and it's an important distinction. And there's no way a tweet by the CEO of the second largest city in Canada would get out if it was in English only. So certain things are unacceptable, certain things are. But after she corrected it, I got into it was a battle royale. It was a cage match with so many people from that party and that administration about me being very harsh on criticism of it, because they didn't get it. I didn't say she's a Nazi. I didn't say she's a horrible person. I said it's unserious and not being treated with the respect it deserves, with the gravitas it deserves of Jewish institutions being bombed in 2023.
Right.
So it's that lack of seriousness, that lack of getting the point.
Yeah.
Everything's la-di-da, and people are misbehaving. That's not the case. And when you act like it is, then don't be expected to be taken credibly. That said, yes, she's got a tall order, the Côte-des-Neiges NDG mayor, because she's got a big borough to run. She's got a lot of files, and they're not easy files.
No.
Human resources and these are not, and systemic racism, these are not things you can spend your way out of, like infrastructure or transit.
No. And I think I've had this. I think I've had this conversation with you. Sorry, I interrupted you. I had this conversation with you that, I have empathy for the borough mayor of CDNEG, no matter who it is, because you're expected to run this very large borough with very limited resources, right? And you're in a borough that's has a lot of challenges, and who are, the homeowners, property owners, are very sensitive to tax increases. So your capacity to raise funds and resources, which are key, critical, it's very hard to rule with you when you don't have the proper resources available to yourself to address serious community needs. And this is a big problem with the borough CDNG. And
I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed is the tone on council. And I say to some extent they're all guilty of it, and we can talk about that coming up at another broadcast.
The next show.
I'll be writing about that because she definitely has a different way of dealing, and it's worth noting.
Yeah, I've commented on that already. Not necessarily on Gracia's demeanor, or but more on, like, there was a whole conversation about politicians, and, like, they're under attack, and how do you encourage people to be involved in the political process when there's like this abuse? Like, well, what about Sue Montgomery, right? What happened to her? What she's in therapy. Like, where's the support for her? What has this council done about that?
You kind of put her through the ringer.
Yeah. So I'm just like, I will remain a critical voice, as I always am, and I think that's important. And Joel and Holden, you're awesome, by the way, as always, Mr. Pickle. We're thinking about doing a contest. We have some ideas, so if you have any ideas for a contest that generate interest, please reach out to us.
We want to grow, and sometimes the best way to grow is to bribe people.
With pickles.
Companies do all the time. So
that's what politicians do. They give away stuff. Fill out this coupon with your information. You can win a bicycle.
Just saying. So
free bicycle helmets.
Prizes, maybe we'll get your specialized Trainman hats or something like
right.
that we can have.
We're talking about giving people Trainman hats. I wonder how popular that would be.
Well, here's the thing. Like, if you follow it...
I actually find that quite frightening.
No,
yeah, I hope people in the borough are walking around with train hats.
Like
I don't think people would necessarily walk around with them like that, but they're like collector's items. Like when you're a fan of a show and some shit like that, you create.
Show your alliance.
Fair enough.
Tribe.
Fair enough.
Or
yeah.
Like, we can get Trainman report toques made. We can get sweaters done. Like
I prefer the pickle photo contest. I think Joel was onto something there. What was it?
You need to
show your
have
pickle.
A prize.
What's that again?
Show your pickle.
Show your pickle. That's right. Like,
where am I?
Pickle.
Where are you with your garden?
Where are you with your pickle? I like that idea a lot.
But we'll come up with something interesting, because like for us it's important. We are going to start a Patreon in the next little bit. We're just trying to figure out reward schemes, because the truth is, if we want to grow, it will require... shout out Adam for the bits. Maybe us viewers can crowdfund a blue line extension to NDG.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. That'd be sweet.
But,
well, there's a report sitting around somewhere, according to Jeremy Searle, about extending the Decari, the 15 at Decari, to the 15 north of the Met.
Right.
Joining it up underground in a tunnel.
He's
the entire Decari circle.
He's talked to me about that as well. Yeah, he's talked. I don't think that's going to happen.
All that to say, we want to get an editor, or if you want to be our editor, that'd be great. Somebody that can comb through the podcast and turn it into clips and stuff, so that we can get on our social media game. So we're going to get the Trainman Report Instagram and TikTok up, so we can get hot clips out to the world, because let's be real, unfortunately, that is how we grow in marketing. Facebook groups only go so far, and they're actually one of the most limited ways to grow these days. So we want to get some algorithm love, and yeah, so to add expenses to our lives, we need some help out there in the world, and that would be beautiful. That's all I'm trying to say. So if you have any ideas watching this on what would be interesting for you to see as a reward for our Patreon, let us know in the comments. And also thank y'all for watching. It means a lot that you come through on the live and
thanks
participate.
for the invite, guys.
Joel,
Nothing on TV tonight, so
Joel, I have to say again how honored I am, and Holden is as well, that you join us and share with us your okay.
We actually had a couple of comments here that I missed on Facebook. So Karen said on something we said earlier, I beg to differ. I work in an East End hospital and regularly witness elderly Anglos allos being addressed in French and being labeled confused when they are perfectly coherent in English.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
They need to be directed to the ombudsperson's office there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And then
So yes.
Shelley also said we called Revenue Quebec and was told that they could not speak English to us until they realized we are now in Ontario. So that's also an issue. That's a wild.
But back on the flattery of Joel.
That's a great comment.
I was really being in the moment of flattering Joel because he deserves to be flattered.
The people who are also there, and now we can flatter Joel.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much for your comments.
I go anywhere. Just invite me. I go anywhere.
Yeah, and again,
glad you guys pay attention.
Yeah, and again, I want to say thank you for the community. I know it's a bit presumptuous of me to do so, but I will. For going to council meetings, being there, listening, and you know what I can say about Joel. He has his opinions, right? And sometimes they differ from me, and he calls me out for it. But he listens. He listens to everybody, and I really have to congratulate you and commend you for that. It's awesome. It's awesome. Thank you so much, and thank you again for joining us.
Sure.
And really appreciate you taking the time. I know Joel's not paid to be here, by the way, and allow us to interview and ask a whole bunch of questions, right? Just so everybody knows, right? He volunteered his time. So again, thank you so much.
Anytime.
Also, all the
You're so kind, Joel.
All the people who are watching on YouTube, feel free to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel.
Please.
If you're watching on Twitch and you happen to have Amazon Prime, it's free to throw a subscribe at the channel. We'd really appreciate you. Also hit follow if you're not already following. Leave some comments. The episode will be available on all your favorite podcast networks after the fact. Give me a day or so latest. And on that note, follow us there too and leave some thumbs up and positive ratings and all the good engagement points. But most importantly, share it with your friends and tell your people to come to us. And let people
bring them home.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the invite.
Peace and love to everybody. Peace and love.
Long and prosper, everyone. Just give me a couple more seconds here.